It's really pouring today, huh? If you don't recognize the people in the thumbnail, then you're in for a ride. The tragic and especially bizarre story here revolves around Jasmine, who at the time was 12 years old, and Jeremy, who was 23 years old. Jasmine was born on October 21st, 1993, to Deborah Richardson and John Mark Richardson in Ontario, Canada. The Richardsons were previous drug addicts who had met 3 years prior at a gymnasium in Sudbury and got married the following year. Off to a great start already. Jasmine's younger brother, Tyler Jacob Richardson, who was known amongst his friends by just his middle name Jacob, was born 5 years later. Shortly before Jacob was born, the family moved to Okotoks, a small farming town just outside Calgary, Alberta. With Mark and Deborah fully recovered from their addiction and now sober, their family of 4 complete, they moved to an old-built townhouse in Okotoks, where they aimed to raise their kids and start a new life. The family initially struggled to pay bills and had to rely on food banks, but were eventually able to purchase a home in Medicine Hat, in part thanks to the promotion that Mark received at his job in 2005. Who the f*** is naming these places? Medicine Hat? See, this is where things would typically start to go well, but it would have never made it on this channel if that was the case, unfortunately. It was around this time that Jasmine started to use the internet more frequently. Jasmine was described as a straight-A student who made the honor roll at her Catholic school and was actively involved in the fine arts program. She was also an outgoing and sociable young teen who made a lot of friends, held an active social life, and did normal teen activities. However, with increased social media usage, interest in the goth subculture, and her continuously becoming friends with older men, her parents began to worry, and rightfully so. In the summer of 2005, Jasmine and her friends began to frequent the Medicine Hat Mall, where they encountered a group of older goth kids. Enraptured, they soon began to befriend this group and model themselves after them, Jasmine included, of course. Jasmine's behavior soon deteriorated after that, with frequent rule breaking such as violating the school dress code, pulling up in fishnets, chokers, and goth-styled makeup, and at home she was argumentative with her parents. Her social media and the contents on her social media saw a sharp decline in normalcy as well. She had accounts on MySpace and Zorpia, where her age was falsified. She posted inappropriate and suggestive images, claimed to be bisexual, claimed to be a Wiccan, and also claiming to drink alcohol. She also indicated that she was interested in a lot of things that she shouldn't be, from serial killers to, and I quote, kinky shit. I'm doing my best not to cringe, guys. We gotta power through. On her profile, she listed the American serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer and the famous musician Marilyn Manson as her heroes. In January 2006, she was introduced by a friend and schoolmate of hers to 23-year-old Jeremy. Even while under the mounting pressure of increased scrutiny by her parents, the two became close. They frequented local concerts and the mall together, as well as corresponding with each other on social media, and eventually they began a relationship. Now, you'd think that parents with the sort of past that they have would have never allowed it to get this far, but nope, they're just practically onlookers at this point. Her relationship with her parents was fraught with even more strain as they struggled to retain control over their daughter. She started sneaking out of the house to meet Jeremy in secret and going to concerts without their permission. She had often spoke about running away from home and wanting out of her parents' household into foster care over the oppression of their rules. She had also begun to develop an animosity towards her brother. According to Jeremy, he had witnessed Jasmine strangling Jacob on one occasion, and Jasmine reportedly expressed discomfort and embarrassment at having her little brother follow her around at family events. Jacob had reportedly confided in a family friend that he was afraid of his older sister. This story really, this really hits home because I have an older sister, and I was also bullied by my older sister when I was a kid. So I feel for this poor little boy. Jasmine had been grounded and her electronics confiscated after two separate incidents in which she had left a terrified Jacob alone at home while she was meant to be babysitting him to go hang out with her friends and Jeremy. Then there was an instance where she had convinced her parents to allow her to go to a punk rock concert, only to sneak away from them and later be caught making out with Jeremy in a back alley. I have not stopped frowning since I began reading this. According to Jasmine, the latter incident was her breaking point. Jeremy Allen Stank was born on January 15th, 1983. He was born to Jacqueline Ann May in Medicine Hat, Alberta. He reportedly endured a lifetime of physical abuse throughout his childhood, at the hands of both his biological father and two of his stepfathers. He recalled a time where his second stepfather had locked him in a deep freezer, and when he defensively broke the arm of an abusive ex-boyfriend of his mother's using a lead pipe. Jeremy and his mother frequently moved around due to the onslaught of violence and chaos in their home, and he spoke of never being able to properly make friends as a result of this. He attended elementary school in the Medicine Hat neighborhood of Southridge. He was mercilessly bullied at both schools, with children often teasing him about his last name, referring to him as Stinky. There goes the usual school bullying on top of an exceedingly rough home life. So it's not supposed to be funny, but I could imagine asking him to do the stanky leg in modern day bullying. Anyway, according to Jacqueline, he had been diagnosed with ADHD and placed in a program at his school for developmentally disabled youth. This elicited further ridicule from other students. I almost forgot how ruthless bullying was back in the day. His mother and her various husbands and boyfriends were all alcoholics, and it was not long until Jeremy started consuming alcohol himself, which he began at age 14. He also began to indulge in several drugs, including shrooms, ecstasy, acid, and marijuana, and he additionally began to self-harm himself. Following the downward spiraling trend, that very same year he dropped out of high school. He reportedly tried to redeem himself from being troubled. He did make an attempt to avoid hitting rock bottom. These attempts include enrolling at Medicine Hat College to recoup his high school education and taking on various jobs such as a position at Tim Hortons and a prospective oilman trade apprenticeship, hoping to create a stable future, but these avenues failed. He soon dropped out of Medicine Hat College and quit looking for any employment. Jeremy came into contact with the goth subculture and slowly began to immerse himself in it. He began listening to heavy metal music, aspiring to be a metal musician himself, and manufacturing his appearance to acceptably meet the standards of the goth lifestyle, including dressing in all black, wearing dark eyeliner, wearing face paint, and shaving his head. It actually gets so much worse and so much more cringe, but we're getting there. He recruited much younger adults and teenagers to become his group of gothic friends, and garnered their respect by supplying them with drugs and alcohol. On his Vampire Freaks page, yes, that was a real social media back in the day, he spoke of liking to kill prostitutes and playing with their insides and eating them. He expressed his likes on the page as fellow lichen brethren and his corresponding dislikes as the hard R and pigs. So this is what rock bottom looks like, huh? I believe the Twilight novel was published in 2005, so it is possible he got his inspiration from there. However, something tells me this guy wasn't much of a novelist. He was introduced to the 12-year-old Jasmine by a mutual friend within the goth movement and a schoolmate of hers, Kaylee. Their relationship began a month after they met. Jeremy maintained the fact that throughout his relationship with Jasmine, she had lied about her age. And she had in fact lied. However, friends of his expressed disgust at their relationship, emphasizing to Jeremy that he was a grown man and she was underage. They encouraged him to break up with her. Jeremy, unfortunately, did not care enough and would instead do the unthinkable. It is April 23rd, 2006. Jeremy is currently unemployed and living in a trailer with his mother. Drunk and high on a number of different substances including cocaine, marijuana, and ecstasy, he enters the Richardson family home through the basement window. He made enough noise that it roused Deborah Richardson, Jasmine's mother, who went to investigate. Upon her seeing him, he lunged at her and brutalized her with slashings and stab wounds. She held up her hands and arms to shield herself from the attack. Hearing Deborah's screams, Mark Richardson, Jasmine's father, charged into the basement. He went at Jeremy with a screwdriver and jabbed Jeremy in the eye. However, it wasn't enough, and Jeremy overpowered him before stabbing him repeatedly. Mark's last words were reportedly to ask Jeremy why he was doing this, and Jeremy replied, "Because it's what your daughter wanted." 8-year-old Jacob Richardson was upstairs, frightened. He had heard the entire altercation. He was found stabbed multiple times and his throat slit. Investigators had found evidence that he fought valiantly against his attacker, and it was alleged that he utilized his toy lightsaber to defend himself in the attack. It's unknown who took the boy's life ultimately, as Jeremy claims that it was Jasmine, and Jasmine claims that it was Jeremy. They apparently rationalized the murder of Jacob with the notion that he was too emotionally sensitive to be orphaned, and thus he had to perish as well. After the murders, Jeremy sped away frantically in his truck, leaving Jasmine at the bloody crime scene. She rinsed off the knife used to murder her brother and filled a canvas bag with clothes and toiletries before taking her mother's purse. She used her mother's credit card to withdraw cash from an ATM at a 7-Eleven to dispatch a taxicab to Jeremy's trailer. When she arrived at Jeremy's trailer, it is stated that they had sexual intercourse. Later in the morning, they went to a house party hosted by a friend of Jeremy's at an address not far from where the Richardsons lay dead. Witnesses observed Jasmine laughing and talking joyously with other attendees, as well as her sitting in Jeremy's lap and passionately making out with him, giving no indication of what had transpired just hours before. Jeremy was also reported showing off his eye injury, the eye injury he received from Jasmine's father during their earlier scuffle. At one point, Jeremy blurted out that he had killed his girlfriend's family, stating that he had gutted them like fish, with Jasmine corroborating and adding, "My little brother gargled." After the party, they had fled along with Casey Lancaster, Kaylee, and another teenage girl to Leader, Saskatchewan, where they were located at a convenience store and arrested. The outcome? Under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, Richardson's name could no longer be published in Canada after she became a suspect. Under the same act, 12 is the youngest possible age at which a person can be charged with a crime. Convicts who were under 14 years of age at the time could not be tried as adults and cannot be given more than a 10-year sentence. On July 9, 2007, Jasmine, who had by then turned 13, was found guilty on 3 counts of murder. She is believed to be the youngest person ever convicted of a multiple murder in Canada. On November 8, 2007, she was sentenced for the maximum amount of time allowed for somebody her age, 10 years. Her sentence included credit for 18 months already spent in custody, to be followed by 4 years in a psychiatric institution and 4.5 years under conditional supervision in the community. In September of 2011, Jasmine began attending classes at Mount Royal University in Calgary, Alberta, during the final years of her sentence. She was released from a 5-year sentence at a psychiatric hospital in the fall of 2011, and in October 2012, it was reported her rehabilitation was going well, and she expressed remorse for her actions that experts considered genuine. In May 2016, her sentence was completed and she was freed of any further court-ordered conditions, restrictions, or supervision after a final sentence review on May 6, 2016. Her criminal record was set to be expunged in April 2021, the 15th anniversary of the murders, provided that she engaged in no further criminal activity. However, due to COVID-19 pandemic, it was formally expunged a year early in 2020. Jeremy admitted to the murder of the parents in a conversation with an undercover police officer while in custody. He also asserted that Jasmine was the one to murder her little brother Jacob. While both of them were in jail, he and Jasmine exchanged letters in which they professed love to one another and vowed to visit one another no matter what. In one of these letters, Jeremy proposed marriage to Jasmine, which she accepted. Jeremy was tried in November 2008 and found guilty by a jury on 3 counts of first-degree murder for the killings of the 3 Richardson victims. On December 15th, 2008, Jeremy was sentenced to 3 life sentences, one for each first-degree murder count. The sentences are to be served concurrently, and Jeremy will be eligible for parole after serving 25 years. Now, how in the was accepting a marriage proposal from your murderous partner in crime considered rehabilitation going well? 2033 seems a little too soon for Jeremy to be free again. Throughout all of this, the one I feel for the most is still Jacob. Rest in peace, little man. What are your thoughts on this story? If you made it to the end, were you satisfied with the legal outcome of this case? Thank you all for sharing this story with me, and remember, I am always chasing the truth.